All right, so I want to talk about one of my favorite concepts. I love sharing this, and it seems like every time I talk about somebody, they get this like, aha, this epiphany. And it's called the Epiphany Bridge story. And when you understand this, it makes selling so much easier. It'll like wash away all of the frustration, the complications, all these things that a lot of people deal with when they're trying to sell. So I'm going to walk you through how selling and how you got into whatever it is you're excited about, how it typically worked. Okay, so what happened is that one day you woke up and you were a normal human being. Life was good. You were minding your own business, then something happened to you. Either you met somebody, they shared an idea, you watched a TV show, you tried something, like some experience happened where you had this epiphany where you were like, oh my gosh, this is the coolest thing in the world, right? And again, let's say it's weight loss. You tried something that actually worked, right? Or it was business. You tried something that worked. Or you read an article and you're like, oh, I get this. Or it could be in religion. It could be like, it doesn't matter. Wherever something happened, you had this epiphany, right? And then what happened is you got so excited about this thing that you started on a journey, okay? And that's what this little bridge is about. You went on this journey over here to the other side, and then you started doing what a lot of us do, and you start geeking out. So I'll put glasses on you to represent geeking out. You start geeking out, start learning and studying, and you start getting super smart at this topic, and you go really, really deep, right? You're studying the science behind it works, and listening to all the podcasts, reading the blogs and the books and the articles, and like you become obsessed with this thing. And then what happens? You start learning this secret language that we call technobabble, right? And then what happens is when you decide that this is the thing you're going to sell or talk about or share with your friends, your families, or your spouse or whatever, right? They come along and all of a sudden you start spewing this technobabble at them. You start telling about the science, man, why this works, why this is so great, and you just spew out everything you know. And then what happens typically? They get this stuff and they're getting like spewed on by all this technobabble and they're like, what are you talking about? And it makes them all nervous and awkward and then usually they walk away, right? Like that's how most people sell, is by spewing technobabble. I want you to understand like this is what's keeping you from selling anything. Any of your videos, your sales, there's like this is what is keeping you from converting is technobabble. If you think about this, like when you were over here, what happened is something emotionally happened to you. You had this emotional experience that was awesome, and so you went on this thing, and over here you then logically sold yourself on why this was awesome. But then the problem is that we take all this logic we got, and this is what we start using to sell people. But people do not buy things logically; they buy things emotionally. Okay, so you have to understand that. So if we come back here, the key to selling is figuring out what was the epiphany that you had that got you excited about that thing. Okay, and then what you've got to do is you start to get really good at telling stories in a way where you tell a story about this epiphany you had and you lead people on a journey. And if you do it correctly and you take them on this journey, what's going to happen is that in the process, they'll have an epiphany like, wow, you're right, Russell, like that is true. And if they have that epiphany, then what's cool is that then they're going to go on this journey themselves. They'll logically sell themselves. They'll do all the work, all the hard stuff. But you don't have to do it. All you have to do is you have to give them the same epiphany that you had. Okay, and that's the Epiphany Bridge story. We understand that, like that's how we sell things. I don't sell things by logically trying to convince you that this is the best thing in the world. I come back and I tell you a story, and I tell you a story, and if I do it right, in the middle of the story, you'll be like, wow, I do need a funnel. Wow, I do need to lose weight through this process. Oh, wow, I do need to, whatever that thing is. And if you can get them that, if you give them that opportunity where they have the epiphany, then they sell themselves. Okay. Now I've done tons of training on this, and so I'm not going to go super deep on this right now. But understand this is the core process to how you get people to convert is by getting good at telling stories and telling the Epiphany Bridge stories. If you've read the Expert Secrets book, there's a whole script in there that'll walk you through the structure and how we tell these stories and how you do it in a way that gets people to feel. Because if you just tell a story, a lot of times you tell a story and people are like, okay, you hear the story and there's no emotion behind it. So how do you tell a story in a way that causes the emotion, that controls the state, so that when they hear the story, they have the same epiphany that you do? There's a lot more depth and detail that you can read in the Expert Secrets book that'll kind of show you more of that. But conceptually, I want to understand that this is the core. This is the process. And so these Epiphany Bridge stories, for me, it's happening in all sorts of places in my sales funnel. If I'm doing a Facebook Live, guess what my Facebook Lives are? They're an Epiphany Bridge story, me telling some epiphany. Okay, that pushes them into a landing page where I probably have another epiphany I'm telling that gets them to register for webinar. On the webinar, I'm telling them other stories to go through and break all their false belief patterns so that when it all comes down to it, they look at what I have to offer and they're like, wow, I do need this. And that's how you create change in people's lives. That's how you get them to buy. That's how you get them to put down all these barriers that's holding them back from purchasing, is by becoming really good at figuring out the false belief patterns they have and then telling stories that will replace their false belief pattern with the truth. And when they believe the truth, then they will follow you on this journey, and they will come in and they will geek out with you, and they'll go through all the logical things, and they'll sell themselves. but this is not what sells them. This back here, helping you share the epiphany you had is what sells them. And so becoming a master at the storytelling process is the key. And if you get nothing else in this training than that, like mastering this will make traffic and conversion so much easier. And it's the key to really having success with your funnels.